It's just so easy to judge when we feel uncomfortable seeing someone doing that we would be actually doing. So it will always be too much. And on the other hand, for the people who are seeking your help, who are seeking your message, who need to hear what you have to say, it can't be enough.
Welcome to Rebel CEO, the podcast where we ditch the rules and build businesses that don't just make money, but set your soul on fire. I'm Brianna Kay, your business coach, freedom advocate, and personal permission slip to dream bigger. I scaled my own business to 6 figures while breaking every mold that people told me to fit into, and now I'm here to help you do the same. I'll help you build a business and a life that's so deeply rooted in your purpose that you never feel like you missed out on the life that you were supposed to live. This is your time to root down, rise up, rebel, and manifest all of your wild goals. So grab your coffee, get cozy, and let's dive in. Hey Rebels, and welcome back. I'm so excited because today, the day this episode drops, is the kickoff day for my brand new program, Rooted. If you did not get in, then doors are officially closed. And I'm so sorry, but I hope that I see you the next time the doors open. But I just wanted to express my thanks for all of the women who signed up, who are trusting me to help them change their future and grow their businesses, because I cannot wait to see the transformation that takes place in this program. Okay, something else fun. This month I'm going to pick one random listener to send a $50 Venmo to, just as a thank you for your support and for listening to the show. All that you have to do is leave the podcast a review. But before you post the review, you're going to want to screenshot your review and send me your screenshot on Instagram at rebel.ceo.podcast. That way you can get entered in the drawing. If you've already left the show a review and you want to be considered, just go ahead and shoot me a message also and I'll get you entered. Okay, I'm sorry about the background noise. My dogs are currently just jumping up and down from my podcast chair because they want to cuddle, but there's not enough room for them all here. So I apologize if you hear that in the background. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the episode for today. I'm chatting with Ivana Ivanek, and she opened up my eyes in so many ways and had so many little truth bombs and wisdom drops in this episode. We're talking about silencing fear and finding your voice, which I think is really important while we're in this era of opening up our eyes to the need to become a thought leader in the industry. So fear of rejection, fear of being judged, fear of being too much, and all of that insecurity tells yourself that you don't know enough. And these fears keep so many entrepreneurs stuck or holding back their gifts and blending in instead of standing out. So today we're tackling how to silence those fears, embrace your unique voice, and leave insecurity behind by closing the knowledge gap. Ivana is a keynote speaker, business strategist, mindset coach, and she's the host of the Online Business by Design podcast. She is here to share her journey from failure to impact and how she's helping coaches, educators, and teachers overcome their own fears to build thriving businesses that create both profit and purpose. All right, let's dive in. Ivana, thank you so much for being on the call. To get started, can you just share with listeners a little bit about who you are as a human and some of your background story?
Absolutely. I'm so stoked to be here, Brie, and I can't wait to deep dive into this conversation. But what you need to know about me, I grew up as a working class girl of an immigrant family. It was shortly before 1991, shortly before the Yugoslavia war, when my parents immigrated from Serbia to Austria in Europe. My family was hustling hard to ensure that my siblings and I had stability and education. And we moved to Vienna. We moved to a city where lawyers and doctors are made. It was a safe city. Education was for free, and even the universities. So, my path to climb the corporate ladder, so to go to school, to university, and do what everybody does, was paved. And that was as well the idea of success for my parents. I was a child that always enjoyed education, but never really the educational path, as I was very curious and I often was questioning things like why I need to know everything about the amoeba virus and how it spreads in a human body. But if I would have asked in school how Beyonce, the journey I'm following since I can remember, founded Destiny's Child being only 9 years old, I was waved off. That was something that we didn't do. We needed to learn for school, and everything, any question that was somewhat out of the ordinary was just waved off. So I quickly learned that Everything that is different than what we do was not for me. I never really aligned with that path as I wanted to travel the world, live by the ocean, do meaningful work as someone who helps people. Don't ask me what that was at that time. I can't even recall it, but I just had dreams. I was a young girl watching the world, living their dreams everywhere. On TV, every TV show was just rainbow and roses, but nothing seemed to be really for me. So at one point I just decided to go and find those opportunities. I set out to find what was supposedly not for me. I quit corporate life despite the promotions because I didn't see the point of working harder in a job that stifled me. I invested thousands into an education and I started my first business as a mindset and health coach. So now the world would have cheered if I would have invested in a house, gone in debt for a car, but starting a business was considered risky. So I was already being somebody who was looked at in my family from a different angle. Are you sure you want to do that? Are you sure you shouldn't be going to work? And I was constantly dealing with this question that it was not encouraging, obviously. But with 24, I was determined that I can prove to run a business and design my own life. It took me only 4 years and I hit rock bottom mentally, physically, and financially. What happened afterwards was a huge self development journey, but what really was the biggest thing I ever learned was to get over fear of rejection and judgment. Because when you start once something that is out of the ordinary for your family, for your friends, and it fails, that's kind of considered fine. But going on the journey a second time, you are considered crazy. And I didn't want to wear that label. I didn't want to be called not normal or being told that I am doing something wrong, although I very deeply felt that it's definitely not wrong. But yet I wanted to live a different life. So I was on a crossroad, not knowing where to start and what to do and how to do it.
I can imagine if you start one business and it doesn't quite pan out the way that you're envisioning it, and then you turn around and do the same thing again, that would definitely be something that people would be like, "Hey, why are you doing this?" And like you said, it didn't feel good. So did you ever consider at that point where people were like, maybe you should choose a different route? Did you ever consider giving up on your dreams and going a different route?
Deeply never. I think I never really mentioned it out loud. I ended up living my worst case scenario. I ended up as assistant of CEO doing the things I never wanted to do. I was going at 8 a.m. to the office, worked long hours, doing what I was asked to do. But I think deep within, I was preparing for a comeback. I mean, I spent another gazillion of dollars for a psychologist that I couldn't even afford at the time because I was exhausted and in pure anxiety because everything I did in that previous business had nothing to do with business because I was just naive, young, and asking for help was a sign of weakness. So you can imagine I got out of the situation broken. And yes, I think I was preparing for comeback secretly. I wasn't talking about it. And eventually what has happened was that I had got an opportunity to leave the country, which was on one hand the silencing voice in the background telling me, how can you go to Greece at that time, that and how you will downgrade yourself, because I will certainly not be able to earn that amount of money I was earning in Austria. And anyway, what you gonna do there? Economy is low in Greece. So I had to somewhat run away from that loud noise, what I did. And as I was in Greece, I had really the distance from everybody shouting at me that this is not the path you were supposed to take, etc., etc. So I could actually be alone, alone with my thoughts, alone with my fears, and work through that. So I had to really shut down and go away from that place where I was told that that's not for me. I was never considering a different path, although I had to take on jobs because somebody needed to pay the bills along the way.
Would you say now that people are more supportive of the path that you've chosen? Have they come around at all?
That's a good question, Brie. I think when we are dealing with choices that are out of the narrative, and we are doing things that are slightly differently than everybody else does, and perhaps even risky, because leaving everything behind, a job, an apartment, family, and just doing what your heart is aching for is risky. What I see right now, I don't think I ever got from my family and perhaps my friends the full understanding. Many of them don't see the innovation. Many of them are not as interested into economy rules and don't see the huge shift from the industrial era into the digital age that is happening so fast paced right now, because just people are not into it and they will never fully understand why I would show up every day on Instagram, why we are having these conversations. This is considered still outer space and very courageous. My people would never do that. Like, and I don't think they truly understand. However, I'm not hearing after now so many years being in business, I don't hear anymore that is risky and I shouldn't be doing that. However, what I do see is as I am showing up and doing my thing, I see people starting to do their thing without me wanting really to change anything for them, which I think is inadvertently that I am healing these silent generations without putting in any effort. I'm doing my thing. And suddenly I see my family traveling. Now my niece is only 10 years old. And when she speaks that she wants to be famous on YouTube to save all the homeless cats in this world, because she has a heart for cats, she is no longer being sent to her room to study for school. But my mom simply says, you know what? Or her mom first says, you're going to be 16 first. And then my mom says, but then you can ask auntie, which is me. So this is changing. And I think that I have started creating the change, showing that it's possible. I probably will never get that thank you. And I probably will never get the full support because it's just, they don't see it. And I think that's fine. I need to take the responsibility for my life and respect as well their decisions. And I think this is how we can co create and be still this loving family we are right now.
Yeah. So you mentioned that doing what we're doing right now, sitting down for this podcast, people don't necessarily understand like why you would do it. And I feel that on my end a lot too, because it's like I'm doing these things to show up online for my community and build my business and just like help people around me. But a lot of the time when you can't see the immediate financial gain, people don't understand why you're doing it. They're like, why would you start a podcast? It's just more work and you're not making anything from it yet directly. So why would you do it? But they don't see the impact and the community that it builds and the people that it helps either. So I definitely think that it takes a certain type of person to be in the more online entrepreneurial space. And like you said, people don't even always have their blinders up or they're not even always able to see where that space is going when they're so focused on the brick and mortar or just like what the traditional idea of business is that's been in front of them.
I absolutely see that. And I think there is no point in going against it because the majority of people is still in a 9 to 5 job. This is our reality. And why consciously going and changing that, because I think that it is so much easier to talk to the people who do have big dreams and who are not willing to put their dreams on the shelf, who are willing to change something. And this is, I think, where I like to direct my energy to, and not into changing, and with that changing the narrative, and not into forcingly changing where I am misunderstood or not being able to be understood, if this makes
Yeah.
sense to you.
Yep, that totally makes sense. I love that. So we're here today to talk about silencing fear and finding your voice, and I think that just based on hearing your story, you're going to be an amazing person to share on this. Do you have any theories on what the root cause of fear or rejection or judgment is in entrepreneurs?
There is a lot to it, I believe. I strongly believe it comes where you come from. From my perspective, it was always important what people think of me. And that story was crafted around what I was supposed to do. So if you now if I was hearing that I need to do a certain job, earn a certain amount of money, and do it in a certain way, and I was taught by my parents, then this comes certainly from their parents. If I would have done something wrong, which in their eyes I did, my grandma would have questioned my parents. So this is inherited. Those thoughts, fears, and stories are simply inherited, what we were taught to do, and this is what we do. And doing something differently, just being labeled different, is already something scary, because by nature, when we think back in the stone ages, far back, where people needed one another and living in a community because they had divided roles, no one was able to survive alone. If you didn't behave, and I just put it very, I just paint a picture very simple so everybody can imagine a crowd living in a cave. One person was responsible for the fire, the other person was responsible for the hunt, the third person was responsible for making the weapons, and the fourth person was responsible for collecting berries, the fifth for taking care of the children, six and seven were responsible for making the new generation, etc., etc. So, and they had needed to work together. If you didn't behave and you were excluded from the group, probably you didn't survive a night out alone. If you didn't know how to make fire, make weapons, and kill animals. So, this is deeply rooted within us that we are by nature craving belonging. Above everything, we want to belong. We are not meant to be alone. And the moment you do something differently than you were taught to do, or you were asked to do, and perhaps your family was wishing for, the fear is to be excluded, to no longer belong. And there is something very important we need to understand, that's just by simply choosing a different path that we most likely won't be excluded, and that path where we are misunderstood, we can today, because we have the opportunities and we are no longer just damned to live with one stamp, so to say, but we have the whole world wide web in the whole world, and planes to travel, and communities in our cities where we can connect with the right people where we are understood. So also the idea of always hanging together with your best friend, because this was the friend who was going through everything with you from day one in school, and then puberty, and then whatever that is, and people tell you you need to stay close to that person. Yes, please do so. And this will only work until you outgrow them, because then they will no longer be able to support you on that entrepreneurial path. And it doesn't mean drop your friend. By all means, do with your friends whatever you think is cool doing. Like, is it hiking? Is it diving? Is it going out? Is it sharing fine dining experiences? Whatever you have done, is it having pajama parties, sleepovers? But if it comes to business and they do not understand, you gotta find your new best friend, so to say. So even if we are afraid to be excluded from the community we are embedded in, which will happen because we are outgrowing them, it doesn't mean that we're alone. We just have the choice to find the right community and to attach ourselves to a group where we are uplifted and not put down. And this can coexist perfectly.
Right. And that might mean that you make new business friends or you make new people in your circle to support your entrepreneurial endeavors, but you possibly want to keep some of your old friends who don't necessarily know or understand what you're doing, and they can, like you said, they can coexist. So you might get your business support from a different group, and then you just don't talk about business stuff with the people who don't get it. You keep it where you guys can bond over certain things.
Mhm.
So
They might keep asking, but then if someone doesn't understand, I just leave the answer simple. Like, I don't have to lie, but if someone is asking me how is business going, which is a question that is so broad, where if I dare to ask differently and ask a question back, I'll be like, yeah, what exactly do you want to know? Do you want to see the number spreadsheets? Do you want to know about my launches? Do you want to? And the people are like, no, 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 no. Like, are you fine? I'm like, I'm totally fine. Don't worry. How are you? So, and if I don't dare to or it's inappropriate in a circle to ask that question, I would just say, yeah, it's going great. And I mentioned something that I truly enjoyed over the past days. And there is always something, no matter how hard business can be at that moment. There's always a podcast conversation where I was like super enlightened to share or something else. And I just mentioned it and I give that question back right away. So I give the attention to the person, and that's it. That is very separate ends for me. And I do not invest my energy into explanation that are going nowhere.
Yeah. So then a lot of people, when they start showing up online and they start stepping out of their comfort zone or trying to show up as a leader, they have this fear that they might be too much or that people are going to look at them and be like, who do they think they are or why are they doing this? So you mentioned earlier that we have a fear of belonging and that in the past, if we didn't have our tribe, then we might not survive a night out in the wild alone. So, how can entrepreneurs take that fear of being too much, which essentially stems from them not wanting to get kicked out of their tribe? How can they take that fear and turn it into an asset for their business?
Hmm. Let me ask you first this: what is too much and for who? Often, when we deal with someone who can't understand, it will always be too much. It can go into too much sharing, too much expressing. And you mentioned thought leaders. And when I work with people, we truly dive into creating that own thought. So people do not have to blind in and be like anybody else, because I truly believe that we do have our thoughts. Everybody has been through something, everybody has made their case studies and observations. And being able to communicate that clearly is a skill learned. So for everyone who does understand the business and the marketing side of business and the industry and the work you do, everything will be too much because it's too much for them. It would be too much for them. It's too much to grasp, too much to understand. There is a huge knowledge gap that is not, that I can't comprehend. And there might be some envy involved, because I truly believe everybody has a dream. So now not everybody has the dream to be present on social media and share their intellectual property with the world. But just seeing someone living their dream and striving for more and doing it despite all odds can be already something like a, I dislike the word trigger, but this is just what it hits here really on point. That people see doing people living their lives, and it's just so easy to judge when we feel uncomfortable seeing someone doing that we would be actually doing. So it will always be too much. And on the other hand, for the people who are seeking your help, who are seeking your message, who need to hear what you have to say, it can't be enough. So there is no too much. And if we direct our energy towards our mission, towards reaching as many people as possible who are seeking what you offer, you will never have the feeling that you are too much. You will more be asking yourself, okay, where else can I go and share? Because this platform is not big enough for me. If you really connect to this deeper level of, I want to create change in this world.
Okay, I love that answer. I feel like that was so powerful. So thank you for sharing that. And then you touched on the knowledge gap. I feel like a lot of the fear that entrepreneurs have comes from imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is a lot of the time from people not actually feeling like they're qualified to do something, which might mean that they maybe don't know as much as they should, or they just don't have the practice, so they're not comfortable doing that thing yet. So, what is one piece of advice that you would give for somebody who's afraid of being called out for being an imposter or for not knowing enough? Like, would you suggest that they go do research or get practice, or is there something else totally that you would suggest?
First of all, when we start creating something new or go on a new journey and start new ventures and launching this and launching that, if there is not a little bit of that feeling of an imposter, just a tiny little bit, just enough to, you know, to have one sleepless night. I'm not saying 30 nights in a row, just like one sleepless night and makes you a little bit more excited then. If this is not the case, please choose something bigger because you are already far past that. And I have a default way of dealing with imposter. If I have the feeling that I'm not good enough for something, I divide that feeling in two things. Like in my particular case, let's say I give you a tangible example. Let's say I'm teaching a master class and I'm feeling like, oh, I feel like canceling it because this is not going to be good. Then I sit down with myself almost immediately because I do not allow this thought to spread and create more fear than necessary. And then I look at the content that I want to deliver. And I ask myself, do you know what you are delivering, or do you know, or do you need to read up something? Is there any point in this presentation where you're insecure? If this is the case, please do so. And then it's done. And the other thing is, am I afraid of the delivery part? Do I need to practice speaking? Do I need to set myself up differently in my office? If that's the case, then please go do so. And often we put these two things together and be like, I don't know enough. You probably do know enough, otherwise you wouldn't be thinking about doing it. It is more the skill sets that you need in order to deliver it. And the first thing I would ever do if someone thinks I'm not enough, or what do I need, or where to start, make an assessment. Where are you right here, right now? With the skill set and resources and transferable skills from anything else you've been doing so far. What is that all? Package that, compare it to your goal, and see what's missing in between. That can be if someone wants to create on social media. I was speaking about this yesterday and hasn't done it before. And we know that short form content is currently the thing, and you haven't been speaking in front of camera. Then don't set your goal to share 10 reels a week tomorrow, because this will not happen. The first thing we need to do is, first of all, accept the way we look, our voice, accept that we are a beginner at this stage and nobody wants to look like a beginner. So this is really, really deep work and self-love if you want. And then you go in front of that camera and you practice speaking, you practice looking in the camera, and then you watch it back. And then you judge yourself critically, and then you improve. And then you learn to communicate your message so it reaches the people, and the people who are watching what you create can see them through you. This is a learning process, and nothing comes overnight, and nobody who is creating out there anything, whether it's podcasts or social media platforms or speaking on stages, nobody was really born with that. Frankly speaking, it's a skill learned. So where are you now, where you want to be, and what do you need to do to get there? This is the formula of how to achieve anything.
Yeah. So essentially just like taking things step by step and just get to the next step and then worry about the next step after that, and don't beat yourself up for not being to the end point when you're just starting.
It's practice, practice, and practice. And practicing and nailing one skill will get you so much further than trying to just be mediocre in anything.
Yeah.
So often also people want to go like super quick, because unfortunately, as the digital world is moving so fast and we have so much information out there and different thoughts and different approaches to anything, it looks like everybody is just moving quicker than, like, you are moving faster than me and you are moving faster than me. It's just not me. Unfortunately, not many people take us through the to the back scene and show us what's really going on, how many takes it took people to make that one video, for example. So this is something we don't see. And I'm just always telling people, stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. You don't have to overtake anyone, because I believe if someone is anything like similar to me and has the drive and wanting to achieve, you are already fast enough. There is no faster.
Yeah, and social media is definitely a highlight reel. So, yeah,
Mhm.
you're definitely seeing everybody else's highlights and you're seeing how much they've achieved and how well things have gone, but you can frame certain things in a way that makes it seem like a much bigger achievement than it actually was too, and I think we see a lot of that, and it's like, "Wait, why did they get to achieve that when I'm still stuck in this place?" And it can really make you feel awful about the progress that you've made, even if you've made huge progress from when you started. So, yeah, I love that you tied in the behind the scenes there that people just don't always show. Although I have noticed there's a new trend going around on Instagram where people are like, I'm this age and I'm not afraid to admit these things. And then it's like a vulnerable post about, like, I still do this or I haven't figured this out. And I think that that's really beautiful too.
And there is much more to it. You're right, Brie. I followed that trend. I just shared something similar a week ago, but I also today said to my folks that yes, I was out last night. Like my going out, you have to know is usually I'm in bed at nine p.m. latest, and by 10 p.m. I'm sleeping. So yesterday I only arrived home at 10 p.m. and I had a glass because we've been at a meeting and we had food and a drink later. So this morning I woke up different than usual and I was tired and found myself doing things that I was not supposed to be doing because I was tired. And when we are tired, it seems like our confidence never existed. I exactly knew what I have to do and I was reading my emails that did have no urgency and I started labeling them, keeping myself busy. However, I thought like, wow, I do not respect my decision enough that I want to achieve something because I have actually something else on my plate. And then I was thinking, how how did I deal with these things when I was back in corporate? Like I was, let's say, 15 years younger. I was working and midweek drinking was a thing. So we sometimes came home at 2 a.m. in the morning and I was 7:30 straight at work delivering. And the only reason why I was doing that is because I had an agreement with my boss that I was respecting. And now sitting at home and doing silly emails nobody cares for is disrespecting my dreams. And I just had this aha moment today in my office and I just simply shared it with my folks and I said, "Yeah, I'm tired today because I had a drink yesterday." And I think this is something that I will be doing more and more and more to just encourage people to also be able to share what is really going on in their lives, that I can also be tired even if I'm like further than somebody else maybe, but this doesn't entitle me from, not being tired or not having struggles or not, not dealing with my own imposter syndromes and everything else, because then the bigger you go, the bigger these fears become. Honestly, we cannot eliminate fears. It's just because it's in the DNA. We would be all jumping from the window, not being afraid to die if this would be gone, because it is needed for human survival. However, we are not ultimately always dying if we do something that is more risky.
Yeah.
So I am an advocate of sharing real life happenings embedded in your brand story. So it also fits. We don't have to spread to the world everything, but we can certainly share what is relevant, perhaps a little bit more vulnerable, perhaps makes you look a little bit more silly. But I am all in for being real and showing what's really going on in our lives.
Yeah. So while we're talking about social media trends and we're talking about trying to own your voice, there are certain trends that go around that people just like copy somebody else or they see something and they're like, "Oh, I resonate with that. So now I'm going to take that thought and I'm going to also use it." Can you speak on the difference between that and being a thought leader and just kind of let listeners know like what a thought leader actually is and what it isn't?
Hmm. So There was a time, you probably all remember it, or I'm sure everybody's joy scrolling social media by now, I dare to say. So we have seen the trends changing, and as strategist, it is my responsibility to look in certain things, also in economically what's happening, but also on social media because it's just a part of it. And let's say 2021, with one of the big hypes and people sharing and selling their services on social media. We had this time of three ways of how to do XYZ, how to crash limiting beliefs. And it was all knowledge that we know by now. We can Google it. If you ask AI, you will get probably a smarter answer or the same answer that you see on Instagram, someone sharing it, because it's probably AI generated. So we need to start thinking differently. And a thought leader is, in my opinion, someone who leverages their intellectual property and shares it so we can think differently. I was teaching this yesterday. When I'm sure we have all our own thoughts. However, it feels either not enough, too big to share sometimes, because who am I to do this? So we want to blend in. If you start fitting into a, let's say, social media content creation formula, and you start and you have that formula in front of you, you have done your work, you know who your client is, what their issues are, and what you want to share, and how you want to solve it, and you start filling in that formula, you are going to sound like everybody else. This is hard, I know, because everything that's out there are formulas and blueprints. However, with we cannot follow that as thought leaders unapologetically. The only rule I follow are marketing rules and some psychological triggers, if you want, or something that makes, that triggers our brains unconsciously, so we actually look at that video perhaps, or there is a certain order how I communicate my message. But by not following strictly these formulas, we have the ability to create our own voice, to communicate the way how we would communicate our thought, and share for what we want to be known for, rather than being taught where to fit in. This is something that we will need to accept more and more in the future, that your thought, it's no longer your expertise. People want to know why you think differently and that you think differently than you and me. This is the reason why you, Brie, and me can coexist and have our businesses, even if we are both on social media, but we in no way are in each other's way, because there is something in personal branding that is becoming more important and bigger, where people no longer will be hiding behind their logos, and it's the personality. And the personality comes with your identity, with your own thought, and with what you want to be known for. And this often does not fit in a formula. It fits in a guideline because this is how we teach it. We need to have something tangible, but strict formulas that we follow unapologetically will, I dare to say, no longer work in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I think that that is probably a very accurate prediction. I think that you're going to be totally right on that. And then I'm going to ask this because I feel like in the past, I would have felt this way. So let's say somebody's out there and they're like, I've just worked really hard for many years to blend in and not make waves and not stand out, and I don't even know what I think anymore or if I have any, like, strong thoughts on anything that people would care about. What would you tell them to, like, get their eyes opened to starting to be a thought leader or starting to even form some ideas and thoughts of their own instead of just taking in what everybody else says?
Hmm. I would take this person off of social media for a couple of days.
Ooh, love that.
It's hard. It's something hard that we don't even allow ourselves to do, because there is a figure we invented, which is the social media police, which doesn't exist. There is literally the reason why we are afraid to be judged, actually, by perhaps even, peers. Nobody would ever do that. But the reason why this is also so scary is, what if I do not fit in that formula? and I do something else, isn't the whole world going to think that I'm crazy? But I would take off this person from social media to get out of every comparison trap. And then I would start with a one simple question. If you leave this planet, hopefully not so early, I would like to have you here now around for another 150 years and more. But if you leave this planet Earth, what is it that people should talk about you? What you want to be known for? The legacy and the impact you want to leave behind on this earth. So, this is an incredibly big question. Many of us do not even dare to answer that, but I do encourage you to do this because write it on paper. It's you and your journal, you and your pen. Close the door, close the windows. Nobody sees you, no judge, nobody. And just write it down. Grammar doesn't matter either. Everything that comes to your mind. And then pick what is relevant for your personal brand and your company. This is the top of funnel content. We share our unique thought embedded in our personal brand story. And we make this tangible for someone who is listening so they can see them through us. There is storytelling involved. There is, and when I mean storytelling, you don't have to tell 10-minute stories, but it is a skill of communication, how to quickly communicate something that is reasonable so you can paint the picture for us so we can relate to what you are saying. And then don't say the random solution everybody is telling us on social media, but give us your solution. And I think this is something that needs incredibly much practice and absolute clarity for what you stand. And we have all our own language, our own thoughts. We are just branded by having to speak about limiting beliefs. But if the whole world does that, we don't know who to listen to. But if you start speaking about about how you shifted your limiting beliefs, and you explain us that the moment you realized that you are adapting your thoughts to everybody around you, and that you were doing everything that people were asking you to, and you only realized that because you were exhausted, and with that you knew that you are not living your own life, then we know more about you than when you speak about limiting beliefs, because nobody cares about limiting beliefs. Painted picture, give us your thought, tell us why we should listen to you. Have you read it somewhere? Have you, is it a case study? Is it something you have observed, something you've seen with your clients? And share this with us. Tell us this story. And this is what will make you sound so different than anybody else.
So then when people start showing up confidently on social media, they're like ready to go, they've kind of worked through some of their baggage and some of their fears. Then let's say they make a post and all of a sudden they get like the dreaded troll. Some random person finds them and they're just like an internet bully and they have judgments. So, what would you tell somebody to either help them not worry about having that kind of backlash on one of their posts or somebody who doesn't agree with what they're saying? Or what would you tell somebody who's had that happen? So you can take this either route.
I personally never had trolleys on social media. They dare to go in my private messages, in my emails. And I personally, with all my respect and love, I always treat these people as people I know that they don't know, and I write them a nice message back. If this would happen publicly, this is none of your business. It's just simply not your business if you get non constructive comments that do not help you move forward, that don't allow for improvement, that force you to explain yourself. This is something we do. I always say, I don't have time for this. I have a business to run and I have lives to change. So I am redirecting my thought immediately. However, because we are human beings, it does stink. Even if your worst enemy you don't care about, and you know that these people are sharing from a space of pain, from a space of envy. Perhaps you said something that really has hurt them, even if you didn't want to, right? Some people, we don't know why people do that. Perhaps they are even bored and they're on a mission to troll around. This can be as simple as that. And it stinks no matter what. I always suggest people, if this should happen to you, put that phone aside. Sit down, breathe. Sit down, meditate. Go cry, go scream, go for a walk, do anything you are doing as per usual when you are feeling upset or when you are feeling hurt, and go without your phone and come back to this situation with a new perspective. Give it 10 minutes and your whole perspective on that situation will change. And then you have the responsibility to decide whether you're going to respond or ignore it. Both ways are legit. It is your personal decision and there is no judgment. So it is
Yeah.
a step away from your emotions. Let it be. Cool down. It hurts. It is not cool to do this. But if it happens, let it be. This is none of your business. We don't have the time for this. So for me, next level leadership is literally to not to take this personal, because there is unfortunately so much going out there in the world today that we can only tackle by showing up and sharing meaning, sharing depth, surface level and being mean, and we can't even give away our energy to this anymore. I don't say we need to ignore it, but we need to tackle it by being an example of not doing it.
Yeah, I love that you said being an example of not doing it. I think that that is definitely something that that can be helpful for people to understand that like you don't have to fix the world on your own, but you can choose to not take those actions and show people by example. So then if you were going to give listeners your top tips for being able to come out of their shell and start showing up authentically as themselves online, what would those be?
Get over yourself and share your message. I think the biggest hurdle we put on uh in front of us is like another you that is mirrored and tells you, you look like this, you do this like that, your nose is not straight, your makeup is not as it is on Instagram if you compare yourself to a makeup artist. You don't know how to do this, and then maybe don't do it at all. Often we are afraid to be judged of the things we are judging the most about ourselves.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
for
not a
sure.
native speaker. Like you can hear my English accent. I'm not from the US. I'm not from Canada. I'm not from Australia. And when I started recording my podcast and I did this first episode, and it was bad. It was actually even only the 10-minute intro. It was so bad. Obviously, I haven't done it in my life, but I wanted to have a podcast. So I knew I need to get in front of this mic and start talking into this thing. So imagine it was sitting me speaking into this microphone, rooms closed, nobody at home. And I listened back to it and I started crying from deep shame and embarrassment because I was judging my voice, how I speak, how I sound, and my accent. And ultimately, the thought switches to others might think the same. Who are you to record a podcast? So what I always suggest here, before you start creating anything that where you show yourself in public, no matter what it is, grab a little mirror, put it in front of yourself. If you want to make this a little bit more deeper, you can have a tune running. You know that music always elevates every emotion we have, right? So do it without music, whatever. It's both is correct. Take the little mirror, set a timer for 3 minutes and just go and look at yourself. Look yourself deep in the eye. Acknowledge every single wrinkle you see in your face, every single uneven part that you judge yourself the morning you wake up. Because we go in front of the mirror and we'll be like, yeah, look at these small tired eyes, or look at your hair, or there is the first thing we do in the morning is judging. Look at everything that you dislike, but look at it and ask yourself, is it really that bad? If you feel, when we start connecting to ourselves through looking and acknowledging who we are, this might get emotional. If you feel like crying, keep on looking. Don't close your eyes. Cry. Observe yourself, your tears. If you feel like smiling at yourself, smile, whatever you need to do. But this work is so incredibly powerful because once you can see yourself as the person who you are and stop judging yourself, you will be able to bring your message to the world, not being afraid of judgment because you are no longer doing it. And this is incredibly beautiful and powerful. And if you need to do this every single day, please do it every single day till you don't need to anymore.
That is a beautiful self love exercise. I love that. That's amazing. Then you have a freebie that you were wanting to share with listeners, and it is about teaching them how to achieve anything. Can you just tell listeners a little bit more about that?
When we set out for big things, and big in your own definition, we want to start a business, a podcast, be present online, share our thoughts, inspire people, whatever venture you're planning to launch. When we start thinking about it and don't really have a guideline to tame the thoughts that are appearing to be big, scary, up to impossible, the next thought people have is, okay, can't do it. And I'm always going like, really? This is it? Like, you just told me you have a dream. You were just having those sparkles in your eyes. When you were sharing what you would love to be doing, I just saw a whole different person in front of me. And then with a second breath, before even finishing the last sentence, they said, but no, I can't do it. I'm like, this is it? How about you do the pre work that shows you that you can actually do it? And it's a 5 key strategy that takes you within 20 minutes through 5 steps that you need to journal and write down in front of you. It's like a plan that includes as well a assessment where you are and where you want to be, amongst other things that you need to assess, put it right in front of you, and once you have done it, you will know what to do next. And this is how it goes to the end, if you can define an end. Every time you set out for something new, you can do this. Every time you have doubt, do it. It's just not when you're starting, but at any time when you're starting something new. And we just, as human beings, we don't like doing this work for whatever reason. Because it's always like a self mirror. It shows us, yes, you're right. This is how I think, and I need to tackle that. But again, you're doing this. It's just my voice. It's an audio training. You can listen to this. You need a pen and paper and your favorite beverage. That's it. Close the door, close the windows. Nobody can see you, nobody can hear you. It's you and your dream. And I think doing this very consciously and finishing as taught is super powerful. Don't be one of these people who download it and then never touch it again, because we don't need another worksheet that is unfinished. Perhaps this helps, perhaps this helps, and perhaps this is better. There is no better. There is no other worksheet you need. Just do those you download. And if you download mine, finish it. This is the only thing I have to say to it, because the download alone won't make their work as
You
usual.
called me out because I am the queen of like, "Ooh, look at this," and then I'll give them my email, and then I'll be like, "I never even opened the email because I thought I would circle back to it later, but I didn't." So, listeners, don't be
Brie,
that
how do you know
person.
I know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've been there too.
Uh-huh.
Guilty.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, don't be that person, listeners. If you download it, make sure to use it. So, like, schedule a time in your planner maybe, because honestly, it sounds really relaxing. Like, I'm picturing like candles and incense or essential oils going so it smells good and just like a little date with yourself.
You can create a space, you can put up flowers, you can,
Ooh.
you can dress up, you can do it in your pajamas, you can do it on your terrace, you can set up that place, because it can be a little celebration for yourself because you are doing something big, and this needs to be celebrated. We don't do this often enough.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay, so if somebody's listening and they want to follow along with you online, where can they find you and connect with you?
The best way to connect with me is on Instagram, Ivana Ivanek underscore. You also find me under Ivana Ivanek on LinkedIn. These are the two platforms that I'm operating on. My podcast, Online Business by Design, airs every Wednesday. There is also like some marketing mindset stuff, and I have cool guests on it too. So these are the three ways how you can connect with me. You can also write me an email. It's Ivana at fabulous foundation.com. This is also where you can reach me very quickly, quicker than on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I will make sure to link your freebie and to link your socials in the show notes for anybody who wants to just reference the notes to click through to those too. So thank you for being on the call and for being willing to share with everyone today. I really appreciate your time.
It's my privilege, Brie. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Rebel CEO. If today's episode lit a fire under you, I would love if you would hit subscribe, leave a rating, and drop a review. That little action helps more purpose driven women like you find this show. And make sure that you're not keeping all of this magic to yourself. Share this episode with a friend who's ready to ditch the rules and build a life that actually feels good. If you're looking for a little one-on-one connection, slide into my DMs on Instagram at rebel.ceo.podcast, and I would love to hear what you're thinking and what you're building so that I can cheer you on every step of the way. And one more thing, if you're ready for even more support, join my free Facebook community. It is packed with like-minded women who are rebelling, setting wild goals, dreaming big, and making moves. The link's waiting for you in the show notes, and I will see you inside. Until next time, keep breaking the rules, chasing your purpose, and creating the life that you were meant for. I'll see you in the next episode.